Being that you teach at a U.S. military college, I understand if you prefer to avoid the question, do the frontline troops view the commander-in-chief as the be-all and end-all decider in these wars, or do they just follow orders from their immediate superiors without question? And the reason I ask is to gauge the potential of a military revolt from within should the constitutional ineligibility of the president become known.
Well, actually, there is an individual case of that already happening. It was very heavily suppressed in the U.S. Media. But there was a U.S. Reserve officer, recall his rank was, I think, a major, but I could be wrong on that, who actually put in a constitutional challenge saying that he had been given an illegal order because Barack Obama was not a U.S. citizen, ergo he could not be president, ergo under the U.S. Military law, any order he gave was essentially illicit, and it is a U.S. soldier is obligated to refuse to follow an illegal order. And initially they were going to charge him and throw him in jail, but actually what happened was the case was quietly dismissed, and he didn't have to, because he was refusing to go to Iraq. And he was just simply sent back to his home unit.
But Cindy, I mean, this is this whole birther group, right? These folks in the United States who don't believe that that Barack Obama was born in America, born as an American, and therefore can't serve as president of the United States. I mean, does anybody buy that theory anymore? That's been completely discredited, hasn't it?
No. There are two pieces of evidence that were required to simply put this to bed. One of them was his long-form birth certificate. His birth certificate was put up on his website is a forgery. There's no doubt about that. The second one was all he had to do was show his university registration forms, because that required you to state your citizenship. But what is very interesting, and this is something that came out of Kenya.
I don't have my university registration forms.
Yes, your university does.
Oh. Maybe, but well.
And anybody who needs to send a transcript has to contact the university to get it. It's not some secret document, okay? It's easy enough to do. If this was such a big issue, why not just show that? What's interesting, a very senior legislator in the Kenyan government, a minister, in fact, and excuse me because I can't remember his name off the top of my head, just recently, in a public statement in the Kenyan parliament, made the statement that Barack Obama is a Kenyan and was born in Kenya. And that was a very interesting point, because the Kenyans, of course, have made quite a big issue, both in his father's home village and district, but also at a national level, of Barack Obama's birthright. So, again, the onus is on the presidential candidate to prove their legal status. Now, you know, at the end of the day, it's sort of irrelevant whether if you were born in Ethiopia or in Kenya to be the president of the United States. It's a constitutional issue. But what the caller's question raises, a much more critical point, is are the orders given to U.S. forces in the field legal under international law when the reasons for going to war were illegal?
I will accept that as a reasonable proposition. That's a good question. Whether or not Barack Obama was born in the United States and whether or not his authority is valid, to me is entirely beside the point.
Yeah, it's a technical point. But on the other hand, clearly under international law, it has been proven without a doubt, because, I mean, this has been stated publicly by the Secretary General of the United Nations, by various international law experts, that the actions of the United States were, in effect, illegal. Therefore, under the military law that the United States service people operate under, they can, in fact, refuse to accept orders related to operations in Iraq, and arguably that can be extended to operations in Afghanistan. And what we have seen is, to date, really no person in uniform has done it, but the minute you've seen a very senior officer retire, you've seen generals band together and write public letters to the U.S. press pretty much saying that, you know, this has got to stop. So there is certainly a case for the U.S. military to essentially say, we're not going to do this anymore. Will it lead to a civil war? Will it lead to conflict? I can't judge at this point. But certainly there is noises being made. The fact is that the cover-ups of the Iraq War are now sort of starting to come out to the forefront, because ultimately we have a situation where it's become clear that Western governments blatantly lied to their electoral population, and the result was that we committed to wars that were illegal internationally. I mean, it's stunning, actually. If you go back to the actual footage as early as 2003, you have people like Dick Cheney and Rumsfeld stating on national television in the U.S. that, Iraq wasn't really that much of a threat, and gosh, I guess we went to war anyway. And again, both Condoleezza Rice and Colin Powell, prior to 9/11, so this is as I recall, February of 2001 for Powell, and July of 2001 for Condoleezza Rice. Both, again, in press conferences, admitted that Iraq poses absolutely no threat to the United States. And so the result is that we are now starting to see the big lie unravel, because the empirical proof simply overwhelms the propaganda that was fed to everybody.